with us as our guests, as it is an honor and a pleasure for me to be your host and your charm troll tonight, if I may. We're most delighted to have you with us again. Thank you all for coming. My name is Arpad Sölter. I'm the director of the Goethe-Institut here in Sweden. And tonight we would like to discuss what future perspectives for a transnational democracy in Europe and beyond might actually look like, if there are any. Because as we know, in many places, people's trust in the elites and the establishment has eroded, and there seems to be a growing disenchantment with respect to the effectiveness of the institutions of the EU and the poor enforcement of European laws expressed by vast parts of the European population. Since the Treaty of Lisbon came into effect, the European Union has been exposed to a series of crises. The euro debt crisis, the bankruptcy of Greece, the refugee crisis, and the ongoing Brexit. And all this together has shaken the trust in the leading elites and their management ability. And this, again, has reinforced Euroscepticism as we know it, and the strengthening of the far right in many countries, including Germany and also in Sweden. Tonight we are very fortunate to have you with us as scholars, as experts, to solve these issues, to solve the problems, or at least maybe point us into the right direction. So tonight the future of Europe is in your hands. No pressure. This evening is also dedicated to Jürgen Habermas. He has just recently celebrated his 90th birthday, and he has published a new book. We'll hear more about it. At the age of 90, can you believe it? He is still a true, very authentic European visionary. Habermas argues emphatically for the transformation of the Eurozone into a political union. And even though he has repeatedly, again and again, criticized European politics for being too elitist, for being too bureaucratic, for being too much of an apparatus. But his vision is not a retreat to the national interest, to the nation states, and an alliance of countries only joined by a common market. His critique of the current European affairs and his visionary outlook for the future of the European Union contains, the way I see it, 4 elements. And correct me if I'm wrong. It's a critique of the European elites. I've mentioned that. He's criticized apparatchiks in Brussels for making decisions regardless of their citizens' needs and for being too dependent, I quote, too dependent on Wall Street. That's an interesting quote, end of quote. Second, a critique of capitalism in its neoliberal version. So he's basically saying, well, we need to criticize a joint currency construction without a counterweight of a post-national political steering capacity. And again, he is very much in favor of towards a supranational democracy. Third, there's a critique of social inequality and injustice. Clearly, what he wants to see is more redistribution across national boundaries. He argues for the eradication of social injustice between EU states and a balancing. He is in favor of a balancing of socioeconomic powers as far as possible. Now, I wonder, being here a guest in Sweden, whether the economically countries of the north, including Sweden, including Germany, whether they are ready and whether they have the political will to be a part of a EU-wide transfer that Habermas has in mind. This is certainly one of the questions you're going to discuss later on. And fourthly, and finally, there's a democratic deficit. The EU, for Habermas, suffers from severe democratic deficits. It's in his vision a EU technocracy with respect to democracy, to transparency, and control mechanisms of checks and balances. But still, and this is the very bottom line, really important, he defends Europe against his critics. In 2007, he has enthusiastically greeted Emmanuel Macron's initiative to reform and to deepen European integration. In 2018, That was very interesting and just happened recently. He has asked the Germans, are we still good Europeans? Because he claims that the population of Europe is, as a matter of fact, far more mature than its ruling class, the elites. You guys are ahead of them. Now tell me whether that's wrong. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Now let me briefly introduce our speakers. Stefan Müllerdom has studied in Frankfurt under Adorno and Horkheimer. He is now Professor Emeritus of Sociology and Director of the Research Center on the Sociology of Intellectuals at the University of Oldenburg. And he's published magnificent biographies, for example, on Adorno, on Habermas. I put it right here in front of you so you can see it and buy it. And if you don't speak German, Polity Press has published the English version. It's a magnificent book. And recently, he has just edited Habermas Global. It's a 900 pages volume about the reception of Habermas on this whole planet. And Michael Callahan has added a chapter on Habermas's reception here in Sweden, which I think is terrific. Michael Callahan is now Associate Professor in Sociology and Director of the Center of Anthropological, Political and Social Theory at the University of Copenhagen. He's been sitting on the train for a long time. Thank you for making all the way from Copenhagen. And in addition to the chapter that I've just mentioned, I would also like to mention one of his recent publications, How to Theorize. I think that's I haven't read this article yet, but I think the title is magnificent. I would like to have a copy from you. So, and tonight they both will engage in a conversation with our Master of Ceremonies, our moderator, Dr. Antonia Hofstetter from Stockholm University. She has written her PhD thesis on Adorno, and many of you will recall this trio because they appeared almost exactly 2 years ago when we had, with our friends from Södertörn, many of you are here, Hans and Sven-Olof Wallenstein is also there. We orchestrated together with our friends from Södertörn an international 3-day conference on the future of critical theory. So now we're taking things one step further. And I don't know whether you're aware, but we've received thousands of visits, not just clicks, visits on our YouTube channel, looking at you guys, giving the papers, introducing the speakers, and all. 2,500 people have actually watched it all over the place. So there's something we must have done right. I would also like to mention, and before I shut up, this is not just looking back, opening a new chapter, this is also a kickoff event, because this event tonight, this conversation and the lectures, they mark a new beginning. It's the beginning of our lecture series on the future of Europe. We call it, this program, Reloaded European Values. And this is nicely synchronized with an exhibition, which is now on tour all over Sweden, about European humanism, co-designed with Oenig. In case you don't know what Oenig is, we talked about it earlier. This is the European National Cultural Institutes in Stockholm. It's a congregation. It's an association of European cultural institutes. The Romanians, the Polish Institute, the Czech Center is here. Thank you for coming, Martina. So don't miss this exhibition. It's nicely synchronized with our programming. And if you'd like to know where and what is happening at the Goethe-Institut here, Umeå, Riksgränsen, Kiruna, just drop us your email, and you'll get a monthly newsletter. We'll be your friends. And you'll get all the information you ever wanted to have. And if there's something you like, you tell your friends, your family, your neighbors. If there's anything you don't like, you just tell me. After the lectures and the conversation, there will be a humble reception outside, to which you are cordially invited, of course. And without further ado, I will now wish you a very pleasant and inspiring evening about the future of Europe. And please join me in welcoming Professor Müller-Dom, Michael Callahan, and Antonia Hofstetter. Tack så mycket. Thank you very much. Enjoy.